Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Everyone who reads and must converse is the channel. Um, this is going to be part 4 of Roberto Bolano's 2666. This is the part about the crimes. This is the lion's share of this book. The part about the crimes is about 300 pages, and it is unlike anything that I've ever read before. To say that it is cold and brutal is a understatement, and to say that it is just kind of despairing might be a way to put it, having not read it, what it is. And I do have some kind of bullet points, because being 300 pages, it's almost its own book, right? We've had 3 parts leading up to this that are very much set up. You get a feel from that, especially this last part, the part about fate. The end of it was just a complete setup for what's to come. And this part switches gears yet again, and we are fully in the city of Santa Teresa. And this part goes through 4, maybe 5 years in Santa Teresa, and the indicators of time passing is how many deaths, female deaths, women and young girls, happened in each month of a given year from 1993 to 1997. The crimes are delivered very coldly, clinically, and I am thankful for that. When it comes down to it, there are so many, over 100, maybe 120, something like that. There's a little disparagement on how many are really there. It doesn't really matter. It's not about the number. It is an overwhelming number of murders and assaults and abuse and torture, and just it is overwhelming. And it is something, and we'll get to what I think, just as we're going through it a bit, what I think Bolano is doing with this, and leading up to the final part of the book, which is part 5, the part about Arkham Boldy. So these crimes, it starts off with an enumeration of crimes through 1993, and there's crimes all over the place. You know what I mean? Like, there's domestic crimes, there is crimes of passion, crimes of jealousy, and also murder, and maybe premeditated, maybe crimes of opportunity, murder of women. But invariably, every crime is a murder, or a murder of a woman or a female in Santa Teresa. Along with that, after a few a little chunk of these kind of enumerations of murders, and you meet Epifanio, who is a detective. You use that term loosely in Santa Teresa Police Department, because it doesn't seem like they have any kind of training or any kind of competency. There's also a church desecrator that starts popping up, and in these churches around Santa Teresa, destroying the icons, the statues, things like that, defecating on the altar, things like this. And you see the police department respond in a way that you don't see them respond any other time in this part. And it is just like a mind blow to think back on this part, how they were, staking out and putting police officers in different churches to catch this guy that's destroying these churches, or destroying the icons that are in the churches. And this serial killing of females is happening, and everybody knows it. And it pushes the reader to a state of bewilderment and just like, what is actually happening here? Then there is Epifanio and a director, maybe of a medical, somebody who works in the medical, does the autopsies and things like that, develop a relationship. Epifanio and this woman develop a relationship, not a love necessarily, but an affair, and it is it is something that lasts for years. They are not very serious, like wanting to spend their life together. Epifanio may love this woman for sure. She might not be as interested in sharing her life like that. But you get a sense of two people in this city and in this situation just trying to survive it, which is what you kind of feel like in this chapter. That as these kind of narrative threads poke through, the enumeration of crimes keeps coming, keeps coming, keeps coming, and it becomes more and more weighty, where you're just like, what can be done here? Come on, do some police work, do something. There are crimes that are beginning at this point, maybe 100 pages in, which is a third through part three, where connections are becoming obvious. There is an organization to some of these crimes, and others, are, like I say, maybe domestic crimes, and all manner of crimes that all invariably lead to a woman's death. So, but you as a reader can see connections, and these police are actually, they don't want to acknowledge it. That's what it comes down to. You see that to call it what it is, an organized, systematic killing of women in their city, is to make it real and to make it something that they have to deal with. And they don't want to do that. They want it to go away. And by doing that, they are essentially enabling it to continue. And why is it happening? Well, it's happening because of that city being the way that it is. These women, all the connections, the connected women, I wouldn't say all, but most, the overwhelming majority of the connected crimes are workers in these maquiladoras, which are factory workers, maybe factories that are this is just over the border in Mexico, the Arizona side, Arizona state border with Mexico. And there is that kind of connection. It's not called out, and it even goes so far that there is this time when one of these police officers, I don't believe one of the Santa Teresa police officers, one of these police officers comes into Santa Teresa from the United States, from Arizona, I believe, because an American goes missing at a point in this, and this police officer from outside of Santa Teresa is so much more invested in getting to the bottom of this, and questioning people, and really just getting into detective work, police work, than any of the Santa Teresa Police Department. And they're almost like making fun of him. They're almost like saying, look at this gringo coming in here trying to, show us how to do detective work. Look at him. He thinks he's a great detective. He's like in the movies. He thinks this is a movie, acting like this is an American movie. And it's like the have some pride in your work. There's no pride. There's no understanding of what actual police work is and what it takes. There is a character, another narrative thread that kind of peeks through these crimes as they're being enumerated. A character named Lalo Cula. And Lalo Cula is a young kid who's actually trained to use a gun, I believe, if I read it correctly, by a criminal syndicate kind of thing. He was trained to be a bodyguard for somebody who has money. I don't think it was necessarily said who it was, maybe a narco. And he was given a gun, trained how to use it, and he was put into a position where there was a shootout and there was things going down. And when he saw what side he was on in the altercation, he switched sides. And his partners, his fellow bodyguards, and things like that, they turn tail and run, and he starts shooting at them. And the police officers see that, and they see what he did, and they recruit him to the Santa Teresa Police Department. So he is now kind of a protege of Epifanio, and he, you see the kind of training and what it takes to be a Santa Teresa police officer. Not much. Be able to use a gun. Have some courage. And that's it. You don't have to be trained. You don't have to go to school for any kind of police work or being able to be aware of your surroundings and look for evidence. Nothing like this, And it's just inept police. They're slow. There's so many of these crimes enumerated where, it says, the police showed up an hour later, 30 minutes later, 3 hours later. These kind of things. And as a reader, especially an American reader, these kind of things stick out with you because there is no way that you would call the cops here and say there's there's been a shooting and somebody is down and I think they're dead, things like this, and the cops not be there in 5 to 10 minutes max. I mean, that is even a long time to wait. Somebody would be racing to your area. This kind of thing. There's little or no detective work shown in maybe the first 2/3 of this part right here. So maybe for 200 out of the 300 pages, there's like little to no real police work being done, especially by the Santa Teresa Police Department. They are wanting to quiet it up. They want to quiet it down. They want to, not acknowledge it being what it is. They also are all too quick when there is a confession, because there's all kinds of crimes that are enumerated, like I said, right? When there is a confession and when there is somebody who says, yeah, well, I killed her because, she was cheating on me or whatever it was, a husband and wife or a boyfriend or whatever, when there is a confession or when there is an actual suspect and they go and get that suspect and then they question him and he confesses, at that point, they are always trying to pin more crimes on that person when there is no reason to think that they've done these other horrific crimes that are all connected. They are just reaching and trying to pin it on just to get it case closed, to get it done. And it's just ridiculous. Connections get to be undeniable between these crimes, and then there is a reluctance to even call them serial killings, to say publicly that there's a serial killer in Santa Teresa. And it's been like 2 or 3 years of this stuff. And you have these big high-level officials in a meeting talking, and one of them just keep on saying, well, but we need to do this discreetly. Okay, we need to not stir anything up with this. Stir anything up? Who's stirring anything up? I mean, There are protests in the streets by women that are, have had it with there not being anything done about these crimes. And they're looked at as starting starting problems in the society, wanting to stir things up. And I mean, it's just it becomes overwhelming for the reader in big ways where you're just like there's almost a despair. What can be done? How do we move through this? Who is going to be able to come in and actually do something about this? It's obvious that there is high level organized crime at work here. If it is serial killers, more than one, for sure. But if it is serial killers, then they are being protected by somebody. It is happening. It becomes obvious. And it is just like, they can't do what they need to do. There is there is times where evidence just is lost. And it's just the incompetence going on. They can't find a suspect, so they just close the case. They can't identify a victim, so there's a public grave in Santa Teresa now where they are just burying all the unidentified women, all the ones where they don't know what name to attribute them to, and things like this. It is very, very, very dark and very, very just sad, and you're just it's bordering on despair. And to think of how these people are living, and this is the place where Amalfitano is living with his daughter. This is the place where the critics have come and are whining and dining and, wondering who's going to end up with Norton. It's ridiculous. They find a white guy, American, former American, or maybe he is American, but has moved to Santa Teresa, and he runs an electronics shop, and he has 2 locations that he runs, and his name is Haas, Hass. I believe he's German by ethnicity, by ancestry, but he's an American, German American, I guess, and he has a very successful electronics business in Santa Teresa. Well, the Santa Teresa police actually pin one of the murders on him because they can trace that she had been in the store not long before she was murdered. And they proceed to pin many, many murders on him, and it is one of the most interesting parts, and really takes this part through to the end here, where Haas becomes this scapegoat for them to publicly say the murders are over, we've done it, we've caught the guy, there's not been any trial, there's not been any real evidence put forth at all to this person, but he's being destroyed, completely destroyed, and now he is in a very high level maximum security prison with inmates that are murderers, are very bad people, and he has to live that kind of life, and has done it and does it for the last year and a half of this part. It is overwhelmingly bad. But he becomes a kind of a detective himself. And at some point he says, and holds press conferences, and he's letting out things that he knows. And he says, in prison, we hear everything about the crimes, the criminals. We know who the criminals are. We know what they do. We know what they run. And I know who the murderers are. I know who they really are. Well, who, is there somebody going to give credence to that? You, as a reader, know that Haas is not our serial killer. There is a tendency for people, and this is all people, just a generalization of the great unwashed masses of people. They don't want to think that their leaders and their millionaires, their stars, their politicians are monsters. They don't want to think that that is the case. But deep down inside, I think we all know that these people who are politicians, people who make money on the backs of thousands of other people that are not being cared for or compensated right for their time. We know that those kind of people are monsters. We know that the kind of people who have millions, maybe even billions of dollars, and are not doing anything tangible that you can point at to help humanity grow and become better, we know that they're monsters. We know it. On some level, we know it. But we don't want to admit that kind of thing. And that's the kind of thing that's going on in Bolano's 2666 Part 4, where everybody wants to find a regular person who's just a crazy person that is committed all these crimes. Well, there's no possible way that just a regular person like Haas, who is running a business, has 2 stores that he runs, is always busy doing that kind of thing, that kind of person is a couple few, maybe upwards of like 5 times a month going out and murdering women for years. It's not happening. There's no way, because it would be, that kind of person would be caught. The way that this thing happens is it is high profile people who have protection, who have a front, who have influence, and who have ultimately a lot of power that they can employ to have the things in place that allow them to do what they want, regardless of the law. It gets to a very, very high tension, and the pitch is very, very strong. I mean, we are just right there. The end of Part 4 is very, very strong. Just like the end of Part 3, I said, was really, really strong. Bolano is really good at the endings of these parts, just leaving you just raring to go on the next one. So I can't wait to get to Part 5. I'm going to be reading that one now, and then we'll see what Roberto Bolano is doing as a whole with 2666. Thank you very much, BookTube. I'd love to hear your thoughts or anything if you've read it. Let me know, and I'll catch you on the next part. Bye-bye.